The world only sees the 90 minutes. The tackles, the headers, the clean sheets. The roar of the crowd when the night belongs to defenders. But long before the cameras ever found him, before the stadium lights wrapped his silhouette in gold, before millions learned to pronounce his name, Malick Thiaw was a boy standing between worlds, carrying a future no one could yet measure. Germany gave him structure. Senegal gave him fire. Finland gave him calm. And football became the language where all three could live inside one body. From dusty youth fields to professional academies, his rise was never loud. He climbed in quiet increments, every step forward earned, every mistake absorbed, every lesson carved into muscle memory. There was no viral Wonder Kid headline that carried him into manhood, only repetition, loss, pressure, and patience. At shock, the wake came early. Teenagers are not supposed to carry fallen giants, yet there he stood, learning what football hides behind the glamour. Relegation doesn't just damage clubs, it scars careers. It humbles futures before they unfold. But what many break under, Malick absorbed. He learned positioning, discipline, silence. When others cracked, he learned to stay upright. And when Schalke returned to the Bundesliga, he returned different, no longer a boy chasing development, but a defender who understood responsibility. Italy did not welcome him with mercy. Milan demanded perfection. The jersey carried ghosts. The defenders before him lived in museum halls and mythology, and every touch of the ball came with judgment. Early errors were magnified. Dow arrived in waves, but slowly, so slowly it almost went unnoticed. His presence grew heavier. His timing sharpened. His aerial dominance turned predictable into inevitable. Champions League nights baptized him in pressure that broke louder players. By 2023, his name stopped being a question. By 2024, it became an answer. And by 2025, the Premier League came for him. England is not just faster. It is brutal in ways the body remembers long after the final whistle. His early matches arrived like storms. Pressed relentlessly. Targeted physically, tested psychologically. Every opponent wanted to be the man who exposed the new arrival. But Malick did not bend. He adapted. He thinned his movements, froze attackers with patience, learned when to step and when to wait. By the end of the 2024-25 season, his name no longer entered commentary as curiosity, it entered as authority. With authority came money, not suddenly, relentlessly. By 2025, his salary entered the upper tier of elite defenders. Performance bonuses stacked onto consistency. Image rights layered into new income streams. His net worth crossed into 8 figures, not with fireworks, but with contracts and clauses that built quietly in legal ink. For the first time, money no longer represented security alone. It represented options, and the lifestyle followed, not wildly, deliberately. The first true luxury home wasn't a palace. It was private, hidden behind mature trees and advanced surveillance. Glass walls met stone foundations. A gym built to professional championship standard. Recovery pools that allowed his muscles to live longer than his opponents. A meditation room that no one ever photographed. Everything existed to protect his focus. The house was not built to be admired. It was built to be unseen. The garage came next. Not for display. For control. A performance daily driver designed for comfort and long post-training drives. A high-performance coupe released only on closed roads and carefully selected stretches of highway. An SUV customized for privacy, safety, and controlled access. No neon colors, no loud modifications. Even his machines moved with restraint. By 2025, fashion followed the same pattern. Tailored neutrality. Soft luxury. No screaming logos. Watches chosen for engineering, not attention. Travel outfits built for comfort and anonymity. Red carpets were rare. Football tunnels replaced runways as his place of presence. But while the world debated his market value, something else accelerated in silence. His financial education. By 2025, Advisors no longer spoke to him only about contracts. They spoke about structure, about legacy, about post-career survival. Real estate began to enter the conversation. Private equities, performance tech startups, youth development investments. He listened without ego, absorbed without rush, because he remembered being the kid without leverage. The endorsements came differently than for most. They didn't chase his face. They chased his standard. Recovery technologies, precision equipment, quiet, luxury, apparel, performance, nutrition. Each deal filtered through long-term alignment, not short-term exposure. His brand did not inflate, it crystallized. Discipline became his most marketable trait, but fame always costs something. By 2025, privacy began to thin. Cameras lingered longer outside training grounds. Airport sightings triggered speculation. Rumors formed markets before truth could catch up. Transfer talk grew louder. Spain whispered. Germany watched. England calculated. His defensive metrics now lived in elite statistical territory. Duels won. Fouls avoided. Transitions killed before danger formed. And somewhere beneath all that noise, Malick remained unchanged. Morning training still began before sunrise. Recovery still ended last. Tactical review still consumed late nights. No shortcuts crept in with wealth. No luxury replaced work. His discipline became the only constant in a world now accelerating around him. And then came the season that reshaped his future, not with trophies, with inevitability. Opponents began planning entire matches around avoiding him. Attackers shifted wings preemptively. Long balls changed trajectory to escape his airspace. Coaches rewrote routes. Analysts started building defensive comparison models with only 2 columns. Before Thiaw and after Thiaw, he was no longer just playing football. He was controlling space itself. And in the silence, between training and sleep, between flights and fixtures, between earnings and expectations, the reality settled into his mind for the first time. 2025 was no longer about arrival. It was about direction, because the path he chose next wouldn't just define his career. It would define the scale of everything that followed. By the middle of 2025, the world began to realize that Malick Thiaw was no longer living inside a single future. He was managing several at once. The footballer, the investor, the brand, the foundation, the son, the quiet architect of something far bigger than 90-minute battles. Every major decision now carried weight beyond the pitch, and his lifestyle evolved to match that pressure with precision rather than excess. His living situation expanded, not outward for display, but inward for control. The original property near his club base transformed into a performance sanctuary. Additional security layers were installed. Medical-grade recovery equipment replaced standard gym machines. A full-time physiotherapy rotation became part of the household rhythm. Even the lighting inside the property was redesigned to reflect circadian patterns, aligned with matchday performance. This wasn't a mansion built for admiration. It was a machine built to extend a career. And still, the world assumed luxury meant noise. They were wrong. When he added a second residence in 2025, it was distant from tabloids and predictable football migration routes. A discreet European coastline, salt in the air. Minimal press access, a glass terrace overlooking water that never posted online. This place wasn't for parties. It was for decompression, for silence, for separating man from market. Here, the defender could breathe without being measured. The cars followed the same philosophy. By mid-2025, his collection had reached a level that would already make headlines if he allowed it. A precision-built Grand Tourer. For long drives, a high-performance machine reserved only for controlled environments. A luxury SUV layered with protection technology most fans would never imagine. Each vehicle financed cleanly, insured quietly, and stored securely. None of them pushed for attention. None of them begged for validation. They simply existed as tools of movement in a life that no longer fit conventional travel. And then there was the jet access. not ownership. Access. In 2025, the modern elite no longer needed their name on few. They needed reliability, rotation, and invisibility. Through private charter networks tied to sports performance corridors, Malick moved fluidly across Europe and Africa without ever standing in public terminals. Recovery began the second the seatbelt clicked. Sleep, nutrition, compression. Therapy flight time became performance time. This was the layer fans never saw. And it was the layer defining his next level. Financially, 2025 became the turning point where earnings began to shift into structure. His net worth crossed a psychological threshold the first moment. Money no longer felt finite. But instead of reacting with indulgence, he reacted with architecture. Wealth managers entered the picture not as handlers, but as engineers. Trusts, holding companies, image rights, restructuring, cross-border tax optimization. For the first time in his life, the shadow economy of elite football opened its doors, and he studied it with the same patience he once studied opponents. Commercial interests surged. By late 2025, his endorsement profile had multiplied without ever becoming loud. Premium athletic brands aligned him with engineering excellence. Recovery technology firms built campaigns around his discipline rather than his face. Even luxury labels adopted him not as a fashion statement, but as a symbol of restraint. He did not sell fantasy. He sold stability. And stability is rare in modern fame. That rarity turned into leverage. Behind closed doors, his representatives began filtering offers before they ever reached him. Not every brand was allowed to stand beside him. Not every check earned access. Reputation had become currency. Silence had become branding. And for the first time, the sport realized that his market value extended beyond tackling and aerial duels that now shaped perception. On the pitch, the shift became undeniable. By late 2025, his game matured into something surgical. He didn't chase danger. He erased it before it formed. Forwards began adjusting their movement simply because his shadow existed in their peripheral vision. Entire attacks collapsed under positional dominance rather than physical collision. His calm turned chaos into geometry. One match changed everything. An away fixture under suffocating pressure. Hostile crowd. A striker in the form of his life tested him relentlessly for 90 minutes. Every duel was a statement, every block a warning. And when the final whistle arrived, not a single breakthrough had occurred. Post-match analysis didn't praise the goalkeeper. They praised the silence at the center of defense. From that night forward, his phone never stopped vibrating. Global interest ignited fully. Spain, Germany, strategic inquiries from ownership groups that did not leak to press. Defensive rebuilds, shifting entire 5-year plans around a single profile. The numbers floating in those rooms did not belong to defenders a few seasons earlier. They belonged to generational market disruptors. And Malick stayed quiet. Behind the scenes, his family became more involved. Not emotionally, but structurally. Advisors were vetted through trust, not opportunity. Doors closed as fast as they opened. The circle reduced. Loyalty became policy. He had seen too many careers evaporate, not from injury but from misalignment. Then something unexpected happened. He began giving back before the world demanded it. Youth development initiatives quietly launched across underfunded football corridors. Transport funding, medical access, training equipment, travel pathways. Nothing carried press logos. Nothing carried his name. Kids trained without knowing the scale of what supported them. Because it wasn't charity. It was infrastructure. And infrastructure lasts. His public persona in 2025 reflected none of this. To the outside world, he appeared focused, reserved, almost invisible between matches. Rare interviews, minimal personal exposure. Controlled statements. No manufactured controversy. No emotional leaks. While others built audiences through spectacle, he built legacy through absence. But make no mistake, inside the game, his presence had become overwhelming. By the end of 2025, he ranked among the most reliable defenders in his league. Not on hype charts. On trust indices. Coaches trusted him in final minutes. Managers trusted him with one-goal leads. Analysts trusted him under pressure models. Teammates trusted him with outcome itself. That trust became his currency. And somewhere between the sea-facing terrace, the undisclosed investments, the private jet corridors, and the floodlights that no longer intimidated him, Malick felt the weight of transition pressed gently on his shoulders. He wasn't chasing a rival anymore. He was standing at a crossroads between peak performance and permanent influence. 2026 waited on the other side, and what he chose next would determine how high-end, how far the empire would truly rise. By the final quarter of 2025, the transformation was no longer subtle. Malick Thiaw had crossed into a zone few ever reached before their mid-20s, a space where performance, finance, and identity converge into something irreversible. The boy who once played to survive had evolved into a man whose very presence reshaped systems around him. Money was no longer something he chased. It was something that followed him. By the end of 2025, conservative financial projections placed his personal net worth deep into eight-figure territory. Salary, performance, bonuses, image rights, endorsement layers, and structured investment income moved together like synchronized machinery. His wealth no longer depended on a single season, a single club, or even a single continent. It had become insulated, protected, designed for longevity. And with that insulation came freedom. Not the reckless kind, the strategic kind. He now chose situations based on alignment rather than necessity. Training environments, coaching philosophies, long-term vision. Every conversation about his future involved not just football directors but financial advisors, legal architects, brand consultants, and development strategists. His career had quietly entered a corporate phase without losing its human core. The transfer storm of late 2025 arrived like distant thunder. For months, clubs had been circling quietly. Tactical projections were drawn. Defensive rebuild budgets were allocated. Release clause loopholes were explored. But when the first formal bid finally landed, it detonated the rumor market across Europe overnight. The figures shocked even insiders. Suddenly, every analyst rewrote their expected defensive valuations. Wage structures trembled. Contract benchmarks shifted. Entire clubs began recalculating roster ceilings around a single name. For the first time, the football world fully understood. He was no longer a rising defender. He was a market-shaping asset. Yet while speculation spiraled publicly, Malick's private life remained unmoved by the noise. His mornings still began the same way. Recovery, nutrition, tactical preparation, end-of day, film study. The discipline that built his career refused to bend under the weight of attention. He understood something most never do until it's too late when distraction arrives. Form collapses faster than bodies ever could. And his form did not collapse. In the final months of 2025, he entered a stretch that permanently reclassified his status. Clean sheets against elite attacks. Strategic men-marking roles that neutralized some of the world's most feared forwards. Defensive sequences replayed across global broadcasts, not for violence but for intelligence. His game reached a cerebral peak where physicality became merely the tool of a larger tactical mind. He controlled space. He controlled tempo. He controlled outcome. Away from the pitch, his brand empire quietly crystallized. Not through fame, through filtration. By year's end, his endorsement portfolio looked less like a celebrity collection and more like a strategic investment deck. Performance technology partnerships, recovery, science alliances. Precision sportswear, luxury labels that preferred restraint over spectacle. Each relationship structured not only for yearly income but for long-term equity stakes. He wasn't advertising products anymore. He was becoming part owner of futures. At the same time, his philanthropic structure grew deeper roots. Youth academies matured into full development ecosystems. Education programs expanded alongside football corridors. Medical access became permanent infrastructure rather than seasonal donation. His influence now moved beyond sport. It touched social mobility itself. But no press releases followed. No branding campaigns chased validation. The work unfolded with the same silence that defined his rise. Silence had become his language of power. By December 2025, he crossed another invisible line. Legacy thinking replaced ambition thinking. In closed meetings, conversations no longer centered on next season. They centered on next decade. His advisors presented scenarios stretching beyond playing years' broadcast rights, club ownership potential, global development funds, post-retirement leadership pathways. The idea of him walking away from football one day no longer felt like an end. It felt like a continuation, and yet the body still belonged to the present. One final match in late 2025 sealed his year into memory. Title pressure, hostile territory, 90 minutes of suffocating attack. Every clearance carried the weight of consequence. Every interception carved seconds off the clock. As the final whistle sounded, his team escaped without concession. Not through dominance, but through discipline. The cameras followed him down the tunnel. For the first time all season, he stopped. He removed his gloves slowly, looked back toward the pitch, the noise from the stands still vibrating through concrete. For a brief moment, the empire, the contracts, the investments, the speculation, all of it fell silent. It was just him and the game. That pause revealed the truth the world often misses in men like him. Everything he had built, houses, cars, wealth, brands, existed only because this thin rectangle of grass still demanded his full devotion. And he still answered. By the final days of 2025, his life no longer looked like a footballer's trajectory. It looked like a foundation being poured under a future that extended far beyond goals and clean sheets. Wealth was now stable. Power was now directional. Influence was now permanent. And as the year faded into winter, the world carried one unspoken certainty into the seasons ahead. Whatever Malick Thiaw chose next, it wouldn't just move clubs. It would move